Welcome, students, to this section of notes titled England. This is from Chapter 14, Section 3 and 4. There's another section of notes titled France, but this section is going to focus just on England. Keep in mind you are taking Cornell notes, so you're putting the main notes on the right-hand side and the after notes cues on the left-hand side with a summary at the end. As you can see right here, geographically, England is an island, and that has helped them defend against foes. And so England has become very strategic based on their navy, as you can see right here. France being just below them, England and France are going to develop their own cultures and going to have conflicts against one another. Great Britain is known as the Union Jack, the flag that is. When you mix the English flag and the Scottish flag, you have the original Union flag. Then you added the Irish flag, and you have the current Union Jack from the 1801. As you can see right here, Great Britain is going to include in the north Scotland and part of Ireland, as well as England in the south, Great Britain. The origins of England. During the early times, Britain was constantly raided by Danish Vikings. The original English people were from Germany, and so these German people in England are going to be raided by the Danish Vikings. Alfred the Great, he's finally going to expel the Viking invaders, which will make him a prominent leader and the first English king of England. Gradually, Alfred the Great united the kingdoms under one rule and named it England. You got it, land of the Angles. The Angles and the Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, are going to be a Germanic people that are going to be freed from the Danish onslaught, the Danish raids, and Alfred the Great is going to unite them together into one group known as the English. Then we have William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror is going to be the Duke of Normandy. Normandy is France. Now, what's interesting is that William the Conqueror is hailed as a English hero, but actually he was French. Interesting. He invaded England and claimed the English crown. He was ambitious and tough. He was known as a great in body and strong, tall in stature, but not ungainly. In speech, he was fluent and persuasive, being skilled at all times making clear his will. You don't need to write down that quote, but as you can see right here, William the Conqueror was quite the gallant figure, known as a great king. He was actually French, but he will claim the English crown, therefore he becomes an English hero. The Battle of Hastings, Harold Godwinson. He was an Anglo-Saxon who also claimed the English throne. Harold, however, was shot in his eye by an arrow during this battle, which will give William the victory in England. And so England will become officially a part of William the Conqueror's lands. And so William the Conqueror will be the declared winner and the king of England. Harold Godwinson is not going to be a threat anymore once he is shot in the eye by an arrow. The important laws that come out of England is this idea of common law. Over the centuries, the judges are going to rule on different issues, and they're going to compile these rulings together to be a body of law that we know today as common law. For example, if you have somebody like Judge Judy that rules that one person cannot confiscate something from somebody else, that becomes a law. Because of her ruling, that becomes precedent. We still use this type of precedent today with the rulings that we have in our courts. Today, these principles of common law are the basis for law in many countries, including the U.S. You don't need to necessarily write that down. But you do need to understand that common law is the royal judges creating this body of law as they rule from case to case. So it's kind of a growing law. It's not just one law at one time, but it's a growing, evolving law, so to speak, known as common law. King John, he's going to become the king after Henry II and Richard the Lionheart died. He is a failed military leader. He's nicknamed as John Softsword because he is so failed as a military leader. He's going to lose Normandy and lands in France to the French. So William the Conqueror, his lands that he had in Normandy, which is northern France, those are going to be lost due to King John's timidity. The films Robin Hood and the Legends of Robin Hood during John I's reign are very well depicting of him being a coward. What happens is that his nobles actually revolt against him. So King John I, his nobles revolt against him, which actually ends up being a good thing for England. They revolt against him because he's mean to his subjects. He tried to squeeze money out of the people and raise taxes to an all-time high to finance his wars. So if his wars were successful, the people might be more willing to pay taxes. But because he was such an unsuccessful leader in these campaigns, the nobles revolt against him. And this is important because the Magna Carta will be created out of this revolt. The Magna Carta is going to guarantee basic political rights to the people. No taxation without representation, as you no doubt remember from the American Revolution, the American patriots declaring that basic right that was an English right. Jury trial, protection of the law, so that the law cannot be just manipulated by any king at any time. These are now considered basic legal rights in many countries, including the U.S. On June 15th, 1215, the nobles are going to force King John to sign this Magna Carta. You don't need to write that down, that's italicized. So this Magna Carta is a pretty big deal. The reason that it's such a big deal is because we see that the king's power is becoming limited. That's the most important thing to get out of these notes right here, is that this Magna Carta is officially going to limit the king's power. Previously to this, the kings could do whatever they wanted. But now with this Magna Carta, the kings can no longer do whatever they want. They actually have to follow this body of law. Parliament is created. King Edward I, he needed to raise taxes to finance a war against France. And as we Americans know, raising taxes is never a positive thing. The people never like taxes, just like in England. He wanted to hang on to the last bit of remaining French land. You don't need to write that down. But basically, he raises taxes to finance a war against France. This is important because now we're going to have Parliament being created. As you can see right here, right next to Big Ben, Parliament is currently today. Parliament is going to be ruled by what is called the Burgesses. The Burgesses is a legislative group. So Edward I is going to summon citizens of wealth and property, which are known as the Burgesses. So he's going to summon the Burgesses as well as these knights to advise him in matters. He feels like if he allows these people to advise him, that they will be more willing to pay these taxes. Parliament is created out of this, which is another step in limiting the king's power. So ironically, for Edward the First, he thought that he was getting more power by listening to Parliament, by listening to the Burgesses, this legislative group of wealth and property. But in the end, actually, they end up limiting his power. And we start moving to a democratic government. Last slide here, Parliament created again. Over the next century, the king called the knights and burgesses whenever a new tax was needed. Parliament eventually split off into the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and we have this today. The House of Lords being the nobles and the bishops, the hereditary, the upper class, and the House of Commons being normal elected representatives. So if you were born English, you would vote for the House of Commons. That's more of the democratic group, as you can see to the right-hand side picture. The hereditary group, the upper house, is on the left-hand side there, as you can see with red and black. Thank you for taking these notes. Be sure to review your notes and create a one-sentence summary at the end. Be prepared to share in class. Thank you.